Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. Um, how do I, it's almost like a Elizabeth Barrett Browning sonnet. How do I introduce Krystle Hickman? How do I introduce her? Because I've been waiting for this interview for several weeks as it popped into my visual field. Because what she does is so fascinating. Her work with bees as a National Geographic photographer, as an artist, as a TEDx speaker, as a conservationist. All these things right up my alley. And I am who I am. And as she wrote the book, the ABCs of California's native bees, and each letter is related to a bee. The scientific name,
Mhm.
which is like, oh wow, I didn't know there were that many. So we're going to talk all about this, but irrespective, weeks and weeks before I knew about Krystle, I bought my first special jar of honey from Kuwait because it has healing properties. And being an environmentalist for a long time, I've been worried about bees, and we're going to talk about that. So this is so special, not for me, but for you all out there. By the way, I always tell people, subscribe to this channel. That's how we grow. That's important. But this is just it's so relevant because bees are such a part of our lives. I don't think anybody has a clue how much a part of, we're going to find out. So this is so special, Krystle. You've truly made my day. And again, I've been looking forward to this. So I'm done with my uh, Johnny Carson monologue. It hasn't been particularly funny, but why don't you do a little bit of an intro, a little
Yeah,
background, and then we will jump in to our stuff. Take it
yeah.
away.
I feel like you pretty much introduced me really well already, so I'm not really sure what else to say.
Okay,
But
that's fine.
yeah. No, I started working with bees as like a hobby, actually. It was just supposed to be something fun I was doing on the weekend when I wasn't at my 9 to 5 job. I was working in a financial firm. And yeah, it turned into a career because I initially I started photographing bees that had never been photographed alive before and making new behavioral discoveries and connecting with militologists who are bee experts in the field and online. And yeah, it just turned into a career. And yeah, basically, I think it was 2023. Yeah. Um, I got invited to speak at the California Native Plant Society conference, and my boss at the financial firm I worked at said, well, you could either go to the conference or you can keep working here. So I went to the conference, and this is what I've been doing since. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, okay. Um, Before, just a little background, before bees became
Mhm.
so central in your life, did you ever see yourself, did you ever see yourself as like an artist, an activist, a scientist? Did you ever see that as you were growing up?
You know what? No, I didn't see myself as that, which is kind of funny because it's also what I always was. I always pictured a scientist as someone in like a white lab coat staring in like a museum or a lab into a microscope. I didn't think of science as something that you would do outside. So I did spend time outside. As a kid, I was one of those kids who was like laying on the ground staring at insects all the time. And that's the same thing I'm doing as an adult and just incorporating a camera with it now. So yeah.
Okay. Um, Part of my intro, I mentioned your National Geographic. What does it truly mean, like behind the scenes to be a National Geographic explorer? I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy when that happened because I grew up reading National Geographic magazine, so I never thought I would be connected to it. But it's a very validating feeling that my work is making an impact, but it also put me in contact with some really amazing people that I don't think I would have ever had the opportunity to be in contact before. And obviously there's the financial support too, which really is very helpful. Because the work I do it does require a lot of traveling. And initially I was just paying out of pocket. So I absolutely love the support. But yeah, the validation is amazing.
Okay. Um, I have little glimpses. When I was a regional manager for Luxottica, once a year I had to get in front of 500 people and give a holiday address and stuff
Mhm.
and I used to joke because it was always around Christmas time. So by June, I already got the agita that I have to get up on stage in front of 500 people, and of
Mhm.
course it was building and building every week. It got worse and worse, the agita that I had to do that. So, what is the for you? What is the emotional experience like getting up on a TEDx stage? And
Oh,
were you always uh, able to do that, or did you have to really adjust and train yourself to do that?
you know what's funny? That was actually my first talk ever.
Oh, oh,
Yeah, yeah. So I spent weeks rehearsing that talk and I memorized it with like my mom. She lives in Nebraska. We would be on Zoom, we would be on FaceTiming. And I was just so nervous. And I remember right before I was about to go up on stage, I it popped in my head. I was like, I have butterflies. Like I'm so, so nervous. And my friend who I actually made, who's still one of my best friends right now at that event, she walked from backstage and she had butterflies in her hair. And it instantly calmed me down.
oh, wow.
And yeah, I walked out on stage and according to like people watching, just killed it. But yeah, I don't know. I just really enjoy speaking. I think it's fun. And it also really helps that people like watching me talk too. So yeah.
Okay. Is there a particular message from that TEDx talk that you hope people will take back with them?
Yeah, yeah. So the main thing that my talk is, it was about art because I'm also an artist, but it was about finding yourself as an adult because a lot of times we have all these things what we want to do when we're kids, but then reality comes in and they're like, okay, you have to be realistic now. So that means you have to go to college, get a degree in a field that pays, not necessarily something that you have as much interest in. And then you have to get this job and you have to make sure you save this. And a lot of times when you're going through that process, you kind of lose a lot of your interests or your hobbies and they're replaced with responsibilities. But I was talking about how, as an adult, it is really important, especially for your mental health, I think, to take some time out and reintroduce yourself to some of the hobbies that you may have lost along the way as when you were becoming an adult. Because I think it's just really important. And honestly, it turned into a career for me. So I
Wow.
followed my own advice.
Wow. It's funny how life, who I mean, I sold eyeglasses. I was trained as a pharmacist, and now I'm interviewing you. So, life is kind of funny that way. You just, it's blowing in the wind. You don't know. So,
Yeah.
moving on, because this moving on, and I find this really important. I always hear save the bees, but
Mhm.
I don't really understand what's really happening.
Mhm.
So this is so important. What is the crisis today beneath the slogan?
Yeah. I guess this kind of ties into my story on how I initially got started with bees. So I'm sure you're familiar with this quote, but I saw it on Facebook for the first time. It was if the bee disappears off the surface of the globe, then man only has 4 years of life left. No more bees, no more man, no more pollination. It's attributed to Albert Einstein. So I initially was like, oh my gosh, that means honeybees. So I went outside and was like, I'm going to take photos of honeybees and really, really beautiful scenery. So people can put these on different products, hang them up on the wall, whatever, put it on Instagram so people can look, and it would open up conversations. So I was out photographing honeybees, and then one day I accidentally photographed a different bee, and I had no idea what it was. And I ended up going back to beekeepers who I thought at the time were bee experts, but they had no idea. So I ended up going to Facebook again, and which is a really great place to get factual information. But there was a group in there of entomologists, and there was a subcategory of militologists, and they actually told me for the first time, they gave me this new term called native bees. And they were the ones who actually fact checked me on a bunch of things. So the bee that I photographed was a native bee or a minor bee. And they also told me that honeybees are actually not threatened or endangered. And they also told me that quote that I read was actually completely made up on the internet. So it was an internet invention in the late 1990s, and someone just slapped Einstein's name on it. And clearly, a little gap between the late 1990s and Einstein saying this. But yeah, it's really interesting because a lot of times people still think even companies are like, if the bees disappear, we'll disappear. But what it actually is, if insects disappear, we will disappear, but so will entire ecosystems. So a lot of times when I talk about saving the bees, what that actually means is saving the entire ecosystem. So I compare it to like a Jenga game. That's like my main thing. But like it's the game with the blocks. It's a really steady tower at the beginning, but as you start displacing the pieces, moving to the top, the tower can start to sway, possibly fall. And that's just like an ecosystem. So those blocks are different pieces of an ecosystem. It could be clean air, clean water, healthy soil, fungus, even things we don't necessarily like that we consider pests like aphids, wasps, thrips, spiders, and also bees and birds, so many other creatures. So to have a really healthy, stable ecosystem, you actually need all of those blocks and they'll help secure themselves. So save the bees means save the entire ecosystem. It means saving habitat.
Saving us.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
saving us.
Yeah.
I interviewed a year ago a professor from Cornell who wrote a book
Hmm.
about our changing food. And that kind of blew me away too. I was upset. Chocolate disappearing. It comes from West Africa, and they've got all those, droughts and chocolate and blueberries
Yeah.
from the mountains. I mean, it's just even Scotch, because Scotch is stored in vats in Scotland, and because the temperature keeps rising, it's the stuff is evaporating in the vat. It's so scary, this stuff. Um,
Yeah.
you said something. I have to go back. It's a little synchronistic. You kept talking about Einstein. Uh,
Hmm.
could you just kind of reference that? How to and why I was kind of because I have this picture of Einstein staring at
Oh,
me for the
yeah.
last 20 years. I took his eyes.
Wow.
Yeah, I took his eyes and I channeled. My spiritual stuff. I channeled Albert, and I asked him if he was listening, and maybe he was. I said, I don't
Yeah.
want to know anything about relativity. I don't care. But if
Hmm.
you have some energies you can send to me to make me a better writer, I'd appreciate it. And guess what? 2 weeks later, I was a better writer. Go figure.
I mean,
So,
hey, it worked.
how does Einstein relate to what you're talking about? And why'd you bring him up?
I mean, that's the thing, though. He actually doesn't relate to it at all. It's
Okay.
just that quote that has gotten so many people invested in bees. And someone just made it up on the internet and slapped his name on it. And people are like, Einstein's a genius. So, and he said this about bees, which clearly means honeybees. So clearly this is true. So it's been like 25 years at least. And people keep repeating this quote without fact checking it. And I didn't either initially, but it's like honeybees became my gateway bee because of this.
Okay.
But yeah, it's also a really good reminder to me to always fact check things and always make sure I'm talking to the experts. So I'm not repeating things
Okay.
that are not true.
Okay. Again, the ABCs of California's native bees, which
Mhm.
I hold up again. Uh, Native bees are really critical, more critical than honeybees, correct?
That is definitely true. Yes.
Okay. Why?
So native bees evolved in their specific ecosystem. So a bee could be native to, we're in the United States, so the entire United States. It could be native to just where I am in California, but some of them could be native to an area as small as a zip code. And a lot of times these bees are generalist pollinators, meaning they'll try and pollinate just about everything, but a lot of them are also specialist pollinators. It's estimated about 20 to 45% are specialist pollinators.
Wow.
So what that means is they'll only collect pollen from one particular type of plant. It could be a family, genus, or even species. So if that bee disappears, so too can the plant, which also can destabilize the ecosystem. So it's like that Jenga tower again starts destabilizing. But what's also really interesting as well is native bees can serve as indicator insects. So they are an indication of the health of an ecosystem. So that means you can look at their population changes. Like, is their population increasing? Is it staying steady? Or is it declining? And you could look at them and go, okay, something's definitely happening with the ecosystem. Let me investigate more.
Okay. Um, you hinted at it. Uh, how close are we in some of these areas that you're involved in to irreversible damage?
Yeah. So that's really complicated to answer and kind of hard to quantify
Okay.
because one of the issues with, I'll go with entomology as a whole, so the study of insects, is there's so many insects. There's also so many bees, but there's also not a lot of people looking. So there's things disappearing without us ever realizing that they're disappearing. And one of the ways we understand that things are disappearing is through habitat loss. So if we do know that something used to be present in a certain location, but instead there's a neighborhood there or there's a building, even parking lots, that habitat is gone. And like I was saying before, there's some bees that I've seen that literally only live on a single patch of flowers. That's the only place they've ever been seen in
Mhm.
history. And that's
Mhm.
gone. That bee is also potentially gone as well. But yeah, overall, definitely a decline in bee species. There's also a decline in the plants and their habitats as well. And there's so many lost species, which is bees that haven't been seen in the last 10 years. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know birds, I read all the time, it's so dramatic, bird loss, all this stuff. Just,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. And there's a one bee. It's called Bombus franklini, Franklin's bumblebee. Bumblebees, they get a lot of attention. I think maybe because they're bigger and a little bit easier to ID, so people really know if they're disappearing. But I think this one's really interesting because the last time it was seen was August 2006, but it wasn't actually declared endangered until I think 2021. So that's a huge gap
yeah,
between it last being seen and being declared endangered. Um, and a lot of people in the bee world think it's extinct. And I've actually been going to its range. It has like a super, super tiny range right on the Oregon California border. It's like 170 by 90 miles. That's the entire range. And I've been looking for it for the past since 2021 and haven't found it. So,
wow. Um, how does it feel to document rare species, as you just said, that few people ever see? Uh,
yeah.
that must be so wild. It's like, I guess bird watching, that thrill, that great excitement when you.
Yeah, it's I don't it's such a what because I have a list of like bucket list bees. But
Oh, cool.
I don't go out looking for them on purpose. And I in the book, actually the KB, Ancylindrina clobeli, um, I found that bee on accident because I'd been standing by a bush for like 16 hours and I was about to leave. It was like 6 or 7 p.m. And this new bee showed up and I'd read about it, a lot about it. And when it showed up, I was like, I instantly recognized it as this bee that had never been photographed alive before. And I think I was the third person to see it in California. And yeah, I don't think it'd been seen since like the 50s. And it's a crepuscular bee, and it just I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Um, but yeah, I photographed it and then also like because people don't really study these bees alive too. I got new behavioral information about them. as well. So that was really amazing to contribute to science. And um, yeah, and it's happened a few times actually, just because, there's not a lot of people looking, but it's just, I don't know. It's kind of like the very first time it happened, it was complete accident. I just pulled over on the side of the road and I saw this Eriogonum inflatum, which is a little buckwheat on a little stalk. And it's just like a little yellow star at the top. And I photographed a bee again that had never been photographed alive before. It was in Death Valley. And the most common comment about it was that like the males have this interesting duck face feature and no one knew what it was for. And 20 minutes took for me to photograph them using it. And yeah.
Um, Off topic. So it's no, we to keep animals from being extinct, we gather them up, we put them into different zoos, and we breed them.
Mhm.
We can't do that with bees, can we? Uh,
It's really difficult. It would be really, really difficult. It's people can definitely do it with bumblebees because there's decades of experience doing it with that, but it's really, really hard with other bees. Um, but also it could really change their size, their phenology. Um, because of climate change, there's certain bees that are like primitively eusocial. So they'll basically have kind of like a primitive hive underground, but if something changes in their ecosystem, they could turn into a solitary bee or produce maybe one generation a year instead of three. So, but yeah, also too, because of bumblebee farming, there's now a disease that is really rampant in bumblebees in the subgenus Bombus, because and it makes total sense after, but no one thought of it beforehand. But if you keep multiple generations of bumblebees in a greenhouse and keep breeding them with each other, they're going to be more susceptible to certain diseases because they don't have that genetic diversity.
you know,
And then some of them get out in the wild and they are carriers of this disease.
oh, wow.
And of course, it spreads to wild populations. So I would say we haven't had the best success with this yet. Um, but yeah, I just protect the habitats. Also, I encourage people just to plant native plants in their yard because, like,
Yeah.
literally, that's all you have to do.
And
And then
that
the bees will
attracts
take care of it themselves.
that attracts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Um,
tracks the whole ecosystem.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so there's so many levels and parts, the moving parts to you. So let's talk a little bit about your photography.
Hmm.
I went online. I saw some stuff. Your photography is breathtaking, truly. Uh,
Thank
uh,
you.
um, and of course, some of that is for scientific, purposes. Um, I always like to ask this. There's a how do you're balancing art with like documentation and it's a very fine balance uh,
Hmm.
that way. Do you enjoy that balance of art and
Yeah.
documentation?
Yeah, I love it. Because honestly, what I'm just doing is kind of like I was told you, I was sitting by a bush for like 16 hours just being outside, but it was beautiful. I was in the desert in Joshua Tree. It takes me outside all day. So I've learned astrophotography, landscape photography, and then a lot about bees. And it's been really helpful because I photograph bees for beauty, but also for ID as well. So I don't do any collecting or capturing. I just learn about their behavior. And after I understand their behavior, I either capture them exhibiting that behavior or I try to capture like personalities, like their portrait shots, a lot of them. But they're also really useful for identification because I know what exactly to look for in different bees to identify them.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So, by the way, if I came back, if I came back for another run. On Earth. When I became a journalist 15 years ago, and I walked around with my camera, and I started taking some interesting pictures. If I came back, I would come back as a photographer. I just think it's so neat to capture people and the planet and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
so, what goes in? there must be tremendous amounts of energy that goes into taking like a single high impact bee picture. Uh,
Oh yeah.
I mean, because
There's
you're dealing with maybe fractions of a second, you gotta.
hmm
So that's really
Yeah.
diligent hard work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of it is just like behavioral study. So one thing I kind of said before, when I have these really long days, I show up in the morning when it's cooler out. And male bees typically don't nest in burrows. I actually did discover bees were nesting in burrows, but a lot of them will sleep in flowers or on plant stems. And what's really interesting about them is they'll actually return to the same flower or plant stem night after night. And they'll even do it generationally as well. So you know where they're nesting and then, or where they're sleeping. And then they like to sleep where the females are because their only job is to mate. So, females are in the area.
Good job.
But what's really interesting about them too is when both the males and females are out, they have sort of a routine. And if you just sit there and watch them, you start to catch the pattern of the routine. So just like people have a commute to work, bees will have a commute around their habitat or their bush, whatever flower they're visiting. And you just sit there and wait for them to go back to the one flower they like to perch on or drink nectar from, or just wait for them to fly by on their little route. And then you just kind of pause there. But yeah, there's also bees, like if they're on like a lupin plant, which is basically like a stalk, and then there's like flowers around it. A lot of times you'll notice they'll start on the lower flower and they'll just circle around it. And then you pick a flower that you want to photograph on. And when they get to it, you take a picture. But yeah, I think they also get used to you as well because like a lot of them, you can look at them like the first time and they just scatter because they're so scared. But if you just hang out there and they're like, oh, she's not doing anything, they start to ignore you.
Wow. Wow. Have you,
Yeah.
Crystal, have you ever waited like hours or days for one shot?
Yeah. Yeah. The longest has been 3 days.
3 days for one bee shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because I wish I could talk to bees because sometimes with the photos, like a bee will just be in a perfect position, like absolutely perfect, but they use their antennae to smell. So they'll have one pointed directly at the camera, and it's kind of like this. And people will look at the photo and they'll see an antenna pointed this way and then nothing this way. And they're like, why does that bee have one antenna? So you're just waiting for it to move like this. Or sometimes there's just a very gentle breeze, and you're like, oh, this is really nice when I'm walking around. But to the plant, it just goes like that. And there's no way to photograph it. So
Mm.
a lot of times it's the conditions, but yeah, I've
Yeah.
waited days to get the great photo. And it's like some of them have actually been years too, because I could not find males or like their lifespan is so short. I have to time it perfectly. Yeah.
So diligent, what you do. The time element, it's just mountains of diligence and caring. Wow. We never, we just too busy in our society to stop and take a breath and, smell the coffee and try to understand the things that you see and read. And as I'm talking to you, I'm learning, I'm learning. Um, we'll take a little break. I like to sometimes go off topic, really off topic. There's a couple of questions I actually picked up from one of my favorite journalists, Barbara Walters. So,
Oh,
yeah, I loved Barbara. She was so innovative and creative. So here's one question. Uh, you don't have to answer it. So, excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with. I think I know the answer, but maybe I don't.
yeah. I mean, it's Jane Goodall,
I thought
honestly.
I knew the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I just bought her biography and yeah, I feel like her career path, it was interesting when I started learning about her. I started seeing a lot of myself in her, especially when she was starting out and the path that she's she took. I just think is incredibly inspiring, and I would love to go along a similar path. But
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like I don't know, she also seemed like just a very, she spoke her mind,
Yeah.
and she had really strong opinions, and she followed through with all of them. She was very motivated, and she talked about animals like they were individuals instead of numbers.
Hmm.
And I think that's really inspiring and inspirational because people still like, I anthropomorphize bees a little bit, and people are like, "That's, you can't do that because that's not science." But they are individuals, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Great answer. Talking to you before you went on air, I kind of figured. The other little question I always like to ask, because I'm a movie person. Do you have any like favorite movies?
Oh, okay. I don't change favorite movies a lot. So actually, my one of my favorite movies, which has been my favorite movie since I was like three, is The Land Before Time. I will
Okay.
watch that movie once a year,
Okay.
and I actually have production cells. I have three of them hanging up on my wall from the
Oh
movie.
wow. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. Now we're going to go to gardens. Uh,
Okay.
we're going to talk about some gardens. And I know you're involved there as well. So what role do urban gardens like LA County Arboretum, if I'm saying it the right way,
Hmm.
what role does the Arboretum play in truly saving, uh, trying to save ecosystems?
Well, I would say it depends on what part of the garden you go to, but the Crescent Farm, which is my favorite, it's an educational garden. There's a lot of classes there, and it mimics a lot of the where I am. We have a chaparral or like Mediterranean ecosystem, so it mimics the ecosystem. So you'll have a lot of the birds, the bees. So many different creatures will use this as a permanent home or a stop, like a migratory stop, um, to wherever they're going. And I think it's a really great example of what people can do with their yards as well, because a lot of times people are walking around LA Arboretum and they're like, oh, I love these plants from whatever country. And then they walk past the Crescent Farm and they see so many plants that could be native to here that could be in their yard. And I think it's a really good start to conservation in your own garden.
Okay. Do you think can cities actually become safe havens for endangered pollinators?
Oh, 100%. 100% they can. There's actually a lot of native landscape architects who are basically rewilding people's yards, which I think is absolutely amazing. And one of my friends, Brandy, she lives in South Central LA, and she has completely turned her yard into Mediterranean habitat. And I remember the very first time I went to her house, I realized I didn't actually need her address because just driving down the street, it was all like cement and like green lawns, green grass lawns, and then hers was just flowering and beautiful. And I think I've documented almost 10 species of bees there, but then there's also like hummingbirds, and there's so many other birds that visit. She loves butterflies. Um, but yeah, it's really amazing too. And also, what's really cool is once you actually start planting native plants, you'll start to see there's animals visiting from other locations. And they could be rodents or like lagomorphs, like rabbits or birds, and they'll do seed dispersal. So you'll get seeds that you didn't plant and they'll start blooming in your yard. And I think it's really amazing to see like, oh, well, where did this come from? This is a new plant.
Wow. Wow. Um, I always like to get this reinforced.
Mhm.
How badly does pesticide use affect native species?
It's pretty bad. A lot of it's interesting too, because a lot of it is like forever chemicals. I just watched a documentary called Out of Plain Sight about DDT, and that was pesticides. But it's really it's really horrible because I remember the very first time I encountered pesticides in the wild, it was rodenticide, and it wasn't in a rodent, it
Wow.
was in a snake.
Wow.
And these creatures, they don't die necessarily right away. They slow down, they're easier to catch. So then it could change from the rodents to the snakes or up to the birds. But then there's also people who are like, oh, I love bees, but I don't like wasps or spiders or aphids or something. So they spray these pesticides and they harm more than just their intended targets. And they also stay in the soil. There's even garden stores, like big garden stores, who will have seeds that are covered with pesticides because they're like, oh, people want the really pretty flowers, but they don't want the insects that are on them.
Oh,
So people unknowingly will plant some native plants that they got from a big store that are actually covered in pesticides.
wow.
So yeah.
Oof. Another off-topic question. It seems like everybody I speak to, I somehow weave AI
Yeah.
into the discussion because I've jumped aboard reluctantly, uh,
Hmm.
but AI has been I use 4 different programs. Each one, is uh, so off topic. As AI grows every 15 minutes, literally, will
Hmm.
we ever be able to count on AI to come up with non-injurious pesticides? Maybe I'm dreaming. Uh, uh,
I don't know, honestly. I'm also just not a really big fan of AI in the first place. I've used ChatGPT. I can't remember if it was maybe earlier this year or last year, just to ask it questions, just to see how accurate it was. And um, it definitely can source information from places, but it just kind of throws it out without any context, and also is not necessarily that accurate.
correct.
And it's kind of interesting because I feel like I'm Blockbuster and AI is Netflix, and I'm going to be like
Oh,
basically going out of business.
oh,
But yeah, it's interesting too because I feel like a lot of people trust it a lot, but at the same time, I've definitely heard of people using AI to get like doctor diagnosis for illnesses, and it's been accurate and helpful. Um, it'll definitely get better. I think people say like right now is the worst it'll ever be. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it at the moment.
well, listen, I'm not
I
either,
yeah,
only because
yeah,
we have no idea what we're doing. No idea. And I
yeah,
know there was a group of, I don't know, 1,000 people got together and they signed some kind of a thing, stop for 6 months, just take a deep breath and stop. Because we
yeah,
don't know what we're doing. And it's scary. Of course, people don't
yeah.
realize, uh, we had our first taste of AI back in the 60s when that movie 2001 A Space Odyssey came out. I don't know if people
Oh,
realize that. I went to see it, right away. I was in college and stuff, and I went to see it right away at the end of about a spaceship and astronauts in deep space and the
mhm,
computer, and his name was Hal, the computer, decides to take over the spaceship. So the
yeah,
astronaut is fighting and trying to find a way to pull out the plug to pull out the energy. And so that was our first taste of AI back in the
yeah.
60s.
I
Uh,
think that's definitely like kind of metaphorical for like trying to pull the plug on this. It's kind of impossible, but like from my very brief experience with ChatGPT, it was so interesting because I feel like it makes people think less because I felt like when I would pause on something just to think, like you normally just think on anything, I was like, oh, well, it would be really easy to just go to ChatGPT and get an answer. And I feel like the whole process of thinking of figuring things out mentally is really beneficial, and it's where we grow as people, and AI is basically eliminating that.
correct, correct. Yeah, it's scary. It's a scary thing.
Yeah.
And we'll find some good in it, of course, but it's scary. So we're
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
change directions again.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's so many little things I want to tap into. We'll
Yeah.
talk a little bit about women's science, leadership, and kind of stuff. So, this is
Hmm.
an obvious question. What obstacles have you faced as a woman in science and media?
Yeah, I think the main things are people kind of like I expected I knew what a scientist would look like before. It was typically like an older white man in a lab coat, and that's clearly not me. So a lot of times people look at me and what I'm doing, and they're kind of like doubtful a little bit. And I don't think it's intentional, but people do have internal biases.
Sure.
And I've noticed that there's other people who look very different from me and don't have to deal with that. Um, but it's also made me really confident in working solo and just ignoring people, but also surrounding myself with there's a lot of women scientists that I work with that I'm very good friends with now. And I feel like we've got a really good group that's supportive of each other, and I really appreciate them. But yeah, I'm hoping people, when they think of scientists in the future, they think of like much more diverse group of people. Yeah.
So taking that and extrapolating a little bit, what advice would you give to young girls who, may want to, who love nature, but they're unsure of making that into a career?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't have to just be a career. It could be something you just enjoy, which is could actually be a career. A lot of people can enjoy their careers. But I'd say the biggest thing is just to have faith in yourself. And you should really be the only person who tells you you can't do something. Don't let anyone else tell you you can't do something. Set your own limits, your own boundaries, and maybe see those limits and test them and see if you could push past them. Because a lot of times you might think you see the top of the mountain, and then you climb that mountain and you get to the top and you realize, like, oh, I could go so much farther. So just have a lot of faith in yourself.
Okay. Okay. Um, we talked about bad stuff, this happening.
Hmm.
Let's turn it around. And what gives you, Krystle, what gives you optimism right now in your world,
Um, I
if
feel
there's
like I'm seeing
anything?
a lot of, yeah, I see a lot of people on social media now who know what a native bee is. I, when I first started as well, a lot of people didn't understand what the word native meant. So just like seeing people out in the wild understanding what the word native is, and then also people getting factual information. I feel like it is slowly starting to leak out there. And also because people do have yards, or maybe their friend has a yard, something, I'm seeing a lot of people starting to encourage other people to plant native. And there's a wildlife crossing that is going to be completed this year in Southern California. And what's really amazing is Beth Pratt, who is, I guess, like the quote unquote architect of it, sort of. But she initially was thinking of large mammals for it, like mountain lions, but they're also thinking of insects. So it's a physical native landscaping bridge in an area that has a lot of issues with fire or habitat fragmentation. So it's just wonderful seeing different committees, different individuals starting to like appreciate all insects, not just the really charismatic ones that a lot of people like.
So we're getting there. We're
Yeah,
getting there.
yeah, I'm
Um,
really happy.
so you're a scientist, and I got to run
Mhm.
this by you. Another off topic.
Okay.
Not too long ago, a short period of time ago, I interviewed a forensic geologist, not that far away from you, meaning,
Hmm.
the work you do, and he also dabbles in paleontology and stuff,
Okay.
and he's a professor, and we're really good. We became really good friends from this. And he threw something at me that we didn't finish talking about. We were going to, like, maybe in February. Um, uh, but I'd love your take on this, especially with bees, because there's a thing in my head now that's making me think. So he said to me, he says, Calvin, I'm just giving you a teaser. We're doing some work now we've got some dinosaur DNA. If you see where I'm going with this, you do
Hmm.
see where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
He said, that
Yeah.
movie? I said, what movie? He said, Jurassic Park. I said, yeah. He said, that could come true, not that far away.
Yeah.
And could now, so extrapolating that to bees, could we ever, with all our advanced stuff and that we're doing, could we ever take like a rare species of bee and somehow come up with its DNA? And it's an interesting question.
Yeah. So, I'm not sure about like cloning bees.
Okay.
Maybe. What we're doing, well, what I'm not doing it, but what a lot of militologists are doing right now is they are DNA barcoding bees. So they're looking at bees to see if they're susceptible to any like diseases, what's impacted them generationally, like food sources, what has affected their DNA. We're also looking at the gut microbiome as well, and it also has a new way to ID them as well. And it's been really interesting because there's one bee in particular that I'm working with pretty frequently for the past 2 years. It's called a Halictus tripartitis or a tripartite sweat bee. It's very tiny, super common bee. And it's interesting because through DNA barcoding, it barcodes out to three different species. But if you look at them as individuals, they key out physically to one species. So that's something that's really interesting. And there's a lot of bumblebees where um, the DNA barcoding doesn't necessarily work that well with bumblebees, but there's bees that are possibly two different species. Some people are calling them synonymous, the same species. Don't really know, but yeah, that would be interesting if we could actually get the DNA. I know some people are actually started trying to collect DNA through plants or the air, so they're setting up machines, I guess, to see if a bee like the Bombus franklini, for example, if they actually visited any of these flowers, people just miss them and they're comparing them to lab specimens to see if maybe they are still present. We're just not seeing them.
Okay. Yeah, that really turned out to be a really interesting question. And just chatting with you and thinking, and my mind is firing away, talking to this um, forensic, and I was just wondering if that would apply to you. So, moving
Yeah.
on, moving on, uh, uh, the world of TikTok and the world of Instagram, can that ever be a source of the mechanism to save species by it could be a good
Yeah,
force?
definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's an amazing communication tool. Um, and so a lot of my work I'm spending mostly the time just outside in the field. So I'm kind of slower on writing some articles or notes. But sometimes I'll share things as soon as I found them out. Like uh, male bees weren't known to dig burrows before I photographed them and recorded them doing that. And I photographed and recorded bees in two different families, excavating burrows and sleeping in them. And yeah, it's just, and people have also, they've found things in their yard that are rare or new species and they've shared it on, it could be Instagram, TikTok. A lot of the times I naturalist because that's where a lot of people go to ID these things specifically. But yeah, it's a great way to connect with so many people. I don't think I would actually have the career I have right now without Instagram,
Okay.
because people
Wow.
saw my photos. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So, so sometimes I have my doubts about, social media. I wanted to write an essay. I'm very friendly with. I interviewed him 3 times. His name is Mustafa Amar, and he's just brilliant. He's from Egypt, and he was a pharmacist like me, and we became really good friends. And now, I mean, he's been a diplomat. He's been an investment banker. He's done some of the most amazing things on the planet. A young guy, and he gets a kick out of me. I get a kick out of him, and so he's been writing books on career changes, which is what I taught at Rutgers actually before I knew Mustafa.
Oh, what?
Yeah, I taught
That's
career
amazing.
explorations, and this was before the pandemic, so the whole world has changed. But he's really big now into getting folks to, especially young people, because they're going to graduate And in the old days, they needed a career, and that was their career, and they
Hmm.
move up from level to level to level as they get older, and that's their career. But that's gone. Now they're going to
Yeah.
need four separate things just to kind of level off. Uh, uh, and But anyway, so I thought, who am I? But I was going to write an essay, something along the lines that, hey, all you people on TikTok, there was a wonderful movie with Cher, and she slaps Nicolas Cage in the movie Moonstruck, slaps him in the face and tells him to snap out of it. So I wanted to write an essay to say, hey, all you people on TikTok and Instagram, I'm slapping your face, and I'm telling you to snap out of it and stop watching dancing videos and pay attention to the world, your world that's changing every 15 minutes. You know,
Hmm.
but anyway, so I wanted to hear from you that there's some good that could come out of those
Oh
things.
yeah.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right. I just needed that reinforcement. Yeah,
Yeah. My algorithm though is very bee related. So
sure.
I probably have a little bit of a different algorithm than a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been learning all about that, the algorithms, the metadata, all this stuff.
Oh,
I
yeah.
should be sitting on the porch right now, in a rocking chair, drinking prune juice on the rocks instead of
Okay.
doing this stuff. But
Yeah,
anyway, which
yeah.
which
Sounds like
segues
fun.
to the last question I'm going to ask. I mean, I could ask you a million more things, but for now, the last
Yeah.
question, as an octogenarian, I became an octogenarian uh, in August. It is what it is,
Yay.
and
Congratulations.
so watch how I twist that around. I'm going to twist it around.
Oh, okay.
So when you're 80 years old, Krystle, and it does
Hmm.
happen. So when you're 80 years old and you're looking back, uh, what do you hope has changed from your world?
Oh, that's a good
Yeah, it
question.
is a good question. Well, last
Yeah,
question.
I hope for my world, I'm just gonna talk about this current time, but I hope people are outside more. And I hope people are in a world that does not revolve around them as much because being outside in nature is an emotional and mental reset. So I hope people are outside. I hope people are reading. I hope farmers are farming alongside native ecosystems instead of putting honeybees there. I hope everyone, if they have a yard, you know what? I hope everyone can have a yard in a house that they can afford. That's nice. And I hope their yard is a native ecosystem. Um, but yeah, in general, I just wish for more happiness for people because I feel like that happiness and stability is really important. And it's something that is kind of undervalued in our society right now. So yeah.
Great answer. Great answer. This has been sumptuous. It's a great word. I borrowed that from an old movie, Norma Ray. It has been sumptuous. This has been so special, and I certainly have looked forward to this for a very good reason. You are delightful and amazing, and inspirational, and you
Oh
have
wow.
filled. Yeah,
Thanks.
no, it's true. I call it as I see it. And, I've been around the block. Truly, this has been so special. So therefore. Uh, I'm welcoming you to come back in any shape, way, form. Do panels. We could. we can. I can grab a hold of some Rutgers students and talk about things. And I'm just poised and talk about the book. Again, I want to remind people it's on Amazon, which I looked and I'm going to get it because I need to read it. ABCs of California's Native Bees. So come back. And I'm
I would
so
love that.
appreciative. Yeah, come back. We'll
Yeah.
talk about it, and of course, wishing you formally merry, happy, healthy, all good things. To you.
Thank you. Same to you as
Yeah.
well.
Thank you, and again, just thank you for your time and your graciousness, and wishing you only good things. Don't leave. I'm just going to stop recording. We'll do a 2-minute wrap. Thank you, Krystle. Truly,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much. Hey.